Dum, dum.
Good afternoon. I'm really honored and privileged to see so many faces. Also interesting to see that many of you seem to have an interest for mixed reality. So let me bring you to how mixed reality can support and improve business decisions. You might have seen lately the announcement of Facebook being renamed into Meta, announcing a new paradigm shift. They want to attract, again, younger people on their platform, and therefore they have bet on actually a new universe, Metaverse, virtual environment. This announcement was followed by the one of Microsoft that wants to also make that bet and go into virtual reality. Their bet is on Teams, and you see here that this is what they envision for the future, so everything is going to happen there. There was a boom during the COVID for everything that was online, and they want to leverage on this to go to the next step. So virtuality is, however, just one example. There are many of them. There are many examples of emerging technologies that have an influence on our present and that will influence our future. And at the moment, we might have the feeling that it's disturbing, it's disruptive, what happens around us, but it's just the beginning. So the world seems to be all about innovation and digital disruption. It has created an unprecedented need for decisions as a business, as an organization. How am I going to adapt? How am I going to react? How am I going to envision my future? This requires quite some decisions. And wrong decisions might lead to some big troubles. So there is a bit of fear about making that wrong decision. So how actually try to make the best decision? We'll take an example. I could take examples from many industry, automotive, banks, beverage, but actually when it's about digital strategy, disruption, innovation, it's quite secret in general, and we are bound with confidentiality clauses, so there are not many examples I can speak about. However, we've also been lucky to work in the public sector lately, and in the public sector, well, it's just the opposite. They're actually quite happy when we can disclose some examples of their realization in terms of innovation and how they can modernize themselves. So I'm going to take an example back in 2018. It was the most terrifying administration, the tax authority, that actually got from the federal the real estate tax to launch. They launched post-mail with a tax statement to 400,000 people in the Brussels region, and basically 20% of them had a reaction, a question, a request that led to about 80,000 requests. And those requests had to be processed manually, so there were people that actually had to answer via post-mail to those requests. It takes on average 26 minutes to handle one request, so if you do a bit of math, with a department of 25 employees, it took them 8 months. And basically, there is an average response time of 4 months. So you can imagine after 2 months, if you have sent a request to the administration and you haven't got an answer yet, what you're going to do? Ask another question, and again. So it's kind of negative spiral, and it has dramatic consequences in terms of the satisfactions of the taxpayers, the citizens, quite some stressful situations for some of them. There is also an impact on the satisfaction of the agents, the 25 people working on the processing of those answers. It's something that also has an impact on the budget of the administration, because the people that actually are busy handling all those manual requests all day long, well, they cannot do something else, so you need to hire more people. So how can this situation be addressed? You might believe that it's very easy. You create a web platform, you try to automate as many interactions as possible. You can provide information online so people get kind of self-help and don't need to interact any longer with the administration in order to reduce the workload. It looks nice in theory. In practice, it's a bit a different story. So let's take a look at the usual time to market in such public administration. So by time to market, we mean the time from the moment an idea is generated until the need is fulfilled with a solution launched online. So you start with the identification of a need. There is the usual then procurement process to select a provider. Generally, it takes 3 months. Then there is a decision to select one of the providers. This provider will actually take 6 months to write a lengthy document, generally about 200 pages, that gets read and reviewed by the whole organization. And finally, because it's not so clear to get the decision board or the director board deciding on something, it takes 2 extra months to get them to a decision. Finally, they decide to implement the recommendation. Then again, procurement cycle of 3 months. And then decision of attribution, implementation and testing, and finally, a go live. And this is assuming that the solution that has been developed is actually addressing the problem, which is not always the case. Time to market, 18 months, not taking into account the 2 times 3 months for the procurement. So back to our example. We were in July 2018, 1 month after the launch of the real estate tax. The board of directors of the tax authority had that situation, that terrific situation of so many requests, envisioning the workload it will bring, and already thinking a bit with fear about the next exercise in June 2019. How can they address the situation? So first design question, how to speed up the time to market to 9 months so they can actually get the problem solved for the next sending of the tax statement. We actually got selected to answer that challenge, probably because we were the only one thinking we could do something in 9 months. Nevertheless, we were selected also because we implement or we work with design thinking, meaning that we start by actually going to the users, observe users. Here you can see my colleagues on the market, interviewing people about their needs, trying to figure out their pain points. And actually, myself, I recall that once I was at the counter of the tax authority, and I observed some people coming in and requesting an extra delay to pay their tax or a split payment. And it's something really touching. When you see someone, a man, 40 years old, almost crying in front of you because he doesn't have the money to pay his tax, it's really something that has an impact. And the empathy that you generate at this moment is something that you bring with you all along the project. So basically, what we did was the usual personas, user journeys, to represent the pain points, needs of the different segments of the target audience. We then identified concepts that could help to actually figure out what the solution could be. And finally, we started prototyping. First, low fidelity, then medium fidelity, adding more and more details, more and more colors into the interfaces to end up with a high fidelity prototype. And of course, at each of those iterations, we tested the prototype with a real representative of the target audience in order to ensure that it was okay. So Review time to market, the same procurement process. This can be improved, but this is not the topic of this speech today. Then need analysis. We did it in 6 weeks, from the interview on the market till the prototype I just showed. Decision to implementation actually was really fast because the directors could, on the one hand, get their decision supported by the test that we did with the target audience and the fact that what they envisioned, so a digital platform, was really tangible for them thanks to the prototype. Then implementation, testing, go live. So basically, major change here is that we managed to have that requirement collection transform of previously 6 months transform into something about 6 weeks with the help of prototyping, and therefore the time to market was 9 months. So in June 2019, the solution was launched, the digital platform was launched, and thanks to that, it really reduced the number of manual requests by 55%, and it's something that was then further improved, but the solution really addressed the need. So key takeaway here, prototyping allows rapid decision making, rapid pivoting to realization, because then based on your screens of the prototype, the developers could base themselves to actually develop what has been envisioned and tested with the audience. So it's something that is really tangible and helpful for them. So basically it means faster go-to-market and therefore financial savings. Because if it would have taken another year to get that developed, they should have hired extra people to handle the extra workload. For the ones who didn't know what prototype was, this is a definition. The point with prototype is really to, on the one hand, make it tangible for the decision makers, but also make it tangible for the target audience. If we ask you some feedback about a concept that we just described with words, it's sometimes already a challenge to figure out what is expected or what is envisioned. If we ask you some feedback about a prototype that is shown, it's much easier given that it's something that you can see. IDEO, famous company at the origin of design thinking. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. In time of turbulence, in times of disruption, it's really, really something to be considered if you want to actually get faster and make smarter decisions. But prototype has become kind of usual in 2 dimensions. Probably most of the people in the room know and have practiced what I've just explained. So let's take an example that goes a bit further. The administration of the Brussels region envisioned a new building, and they wanted to convey the message that they are innovative and modern. So, how to convey that message? How to show to both visitors and employees that they are actually in the 21st century. As you can imagine, we prototyped, we designed quite some artifacts, screens, media walls, self-service kiosks, and actually we showed that to the board of directors, expecting a fast decision. That didn't happen. Why? They were kind of satisfied by what was produced, but it had a high cost. And actually it came, or it brought questions, like what are the screen size, what kind of format do we need for the screens, how many screens should we install, where, why, and so many questions. So actually we were a bit stuck. We had to really go further and challenge ourselves to bring it to the next level so they can actually decide on the next phase. What brings me to the design question number 2, how to support decision-making process, especially when it's about abstract concept. So the answer was or our attempt of answer was to model it in 3 dimensions. So this is the tower based on the plans of the architect. This is the entrance of the tower where we wanted to, or we suggested to install all those artifacts, materials, screens, and so on, in order to convey the message and address their need. This is how it looks from different perspectives. So it helped a bit, but it wasn't enough. It started being convincing when we provided the deciders with an Oculus Quest headset, and then they could actually visit their tower in really an immersive environment in virtual reality. And I'll show you what it gives. So you can see it's immersive. It's not perfect experience yet, but it can simulate how it is to walk, to enter in the building. At this stage, they only experienced the 2D plans of the architect. So for them, it was really a revelation. We just had to rescue one of the directors that actually got lost in the toilets and didn't know how to get out of it. But besides this, it really went well. And then the same day, they decided, because they could select what are the artifacts that make sense, what message or what impression are those screens conveying, and what should be then differ in terms of investment. Key takeaway: prototype in 3 dimensions allows rapid decision-making, rapid pivoting to realization, and also immersion into realization. What we just noticed is of added value. So basically, all this equation ends up with a faster go-to-market, better decisions, and financial savings. Now you might ask, how to go further? Or you could just stay sitting in the sand, enjoying the sun. But there are extra challenges, like this one. How to model very complex situations, such as the impact of climate change. We thought of it from 2 perspectives. First, how to model it in a way that encourages citizens to change their habits. Second, how to ensure that deciders actually visualize it in a way that will help them to make faster decisions, because climate can't wait. What brings me to the design question number 3, how to support abstract decision-making. And for instance, how to visualize the link between the traffic and the pollution. So our main or starting concept was really simple, combining real-time traffic evolution and air quality measurement. We had on the one hand the air quality sensors of the city of Namur, which probably you know, but is a smart city, so equipped with quite some sensors, inter alia. And the idea was also to then leverage the actually traffic sensors that they have. So basically they have sensors that can give you how many pedestrians, cars, trucks, motorcycle are crossing this or that point at a given time. We thought of representing the pollution as a kind of colored clouds, color in order to make an echo with the digital signage that you have at the entrance of the city, and clouds because we thought it makes sense in terms of the way to make that tangible. So first step was to get a map in 3 dimensions. We were lucky with the NID, we managed to get a version of that map, but it also came with a first challenge. And that challenge was to actually render the map so the process can be supported, because it's limited to 100,000 polygons, meaning that you cannot render all the details that you want. Then the following question was how to represent the traffic. We first thought of just taking the color of the kind of things that you can see on Google Maps, for instance, and make it in 3 dimensions. But it didn't work a lot. So we ended up representing moving cars with the number of cars based on the intensity of the traffic. Then the question was how to represent the pollution. We had the idea of clouds, as I said before, but solid clouds didn't really work out, as you can see. Okay, it might be artistic, so maybe you kind of like it. But it didn't really convey the message, especially because there was no opacity. So then we thought, okay, we might represent them as a kind of transparent clouds, a bit like real clouds. But then the question was about the color of those clouds. Does it really make sense to stick to our initial concept and having them colored based on the air quality? Red clouds for bad air quality, yellow clouds for kind of average air quality, green clouds for great air quality. Actually, we weren't really convinced about this way to represent. It was not conveying the right impression. Even when it was green, it was a bit, I wouldn't say terrifying, but there was something that was wrong. We ended up by stating, okay, we are just going to use black clouds, kind of, and then play with the level of, or the intensity of the cloud in order to convey the message. So kind of a bigger message means more pollution, so lower air quality, and there is kind of no cloud when the air quality is okay. Then there was the question of how to manage the user interface. Again, back to our initial design question, the way to convey the message so the deciders can actually make faster decisions. We thought about many concepts. We looked for inspiration sources a bit everywhere, and how can we ensure that actually the visitors of our booth can actually enjoy and understand what to do, how to interact with the model, and really make that link so ultimately they end up changing their habits. This is the kind of compilation of the 3 things, so the traffic, the clouds, and the user interface. You can see it from many perspectives. And this is a demo that was recorded this morning. It doesn't zoom. And you can toggle the pollution and the traffic so it gets displayed or not. So if you haven't experienced it yet yourself, I really invite you to go at our booth at the KIKK Market and do it. And then let us know your feedback, whether you believe it makes it or not. Key takeaway here, prototyping in mixed reality allows rapid decision making, rapid pivoting to realization, interactive immersion, and the possibility to make complex concepts getting tangible. in order to, again, faster go-to-market, better decisions, and therefore financial savings. By the way, this is the only takeaway that at this stage is only an assumption. We haven't managed to get that proven by project. I would say stay tuned. It will come in the next months. We'll post some news about how this was received by some of the institutions, public institutions in Belgium. We will let you know whether it's a takeaway you can really take away. So the question then might be, okay, what's next? You're getting used to my questions, right? Probably also to the Lego Stormtroopers. So next step might be, okay, how can we really use it as decision makers in order to change something about smart cities? It's great to create a digital twin in order to convey the message, to have this interactive visualization that helps you to better understand the link between abstract concepts, but how can we really make it a powerful and useful tool? So one of the ideas was to actually see the impact of the parking lots on the pollution. And as Namur is about getting the data, real life data from the parking, we could actually try to see whether there is a positive correlation between the usage of the parking at various places and then the pollution or the air quality. You could also consider not only the parking that are in town, but the ones that are outside of the city. What's their influence on the air quality? We could also consider the influence of the green spaces in order to actually absorb CO2 and see their influence, modeling their influence, simulating their influence in a city in order to actually, when about deciding for a new commercial mall or a new building somewhere, maybe actually the city doesn't need another commercial mall. Maybe the city rather needs just a park. Another idea was to actually blend the experiences. So here we see on the top an experience with virtual reality, and at the bottom is something that happens every day on the railway, where operators have to actually get a computer displayed in order to get instructions that they have to follow. So maybe we can consider that those worlds are not mutually exclusive. So we could have virtual reality on the one hand, for instance, for learning, training purpose, stuff that was really useful during the lockdown for operators of the railway to actually practice from their home. It's something that can be used also to actually, when those people that train at home go on the field and have to operate those machines, they can actually figure out or make the link between the two. And going to, so that was in augmented reality. And mixed reality can be used then to repair some installations by having extra information as an overlay in front of your eyes. So you don't need, on the one hand, to handle a computer or a sheet of instructions, and on the other hand, handle your key or hammer or whatever. So we could actually use those concepts that were used here at a client in a railway and transport those concepts for citizens. What if we would create an app with augmented reality that displays in real time the air quality as clouds? Or it can be used to actually visualize where the big pollution peaks occur in a city, and actually try to then educate the citizens in terms of, again, conveying that message, making tangible that if they take their car every day to commute, because, for instance, they live outside of Brussels and they have to go to Brussels for their work, and they have a company car, so they drive alone. What is the world that they are leaving to their children? You can give us feedback at the end of the presentation whether you believe it's a good idea or not. But actually, this is kind of the next steps. So I'd like to have you also thinking about what are your cases that you believe mixed reality can be a help for? What are the decisions that you cannot get from your director, your board, your investors? And maybe mixed reality can help those cases. We've seen is in quite some of the examples, and we can actually take the first one, that in terms of cost, if you actually pay a, I would say, traditional functional or business analyst to collect your requirements for 6 months, actually you have generally 2 of these analysts, so let's say it means 120 man days. And on the other hand, in 6 weeks, you could have a prototype and it costs you 70 man days. So there is a financial gain in opting for that method. What are the cases that are in your environment that would actually fit? I invite you to really give us some feedback. Can be at our booth, can be later on. Feel free to connect. There is just one thing I'd like to add, is that in order to actually combine all those concepts, there is something that is really important, and it's actually a role of experience or service designer, if you like, because generally to create such an experience like the HoloCity I just demonstrated, you need many profiles. You need 3D artists, you need UX designers, you need developers, but you also need someone that is a kind of the glue between all those profiles. And this someone is a service or experience designer. It's the role of the person that will actually link your business concept, your strategy, the input or constraints from the technology, the aesthetic aspect, the UX aspect, and make them all together, so actually it gives an experience that makes sense and addresses your problem. So it's really a role that is kind of new in, at least in Belgium. So I encourage you to discuss with service or experience designers, and you might say, okay, what's the point? Why this guy is telling us that now? Well, it's because there was a message that I wanted to convey. This message is that Deloitte is known for audit, consulting, tax services, but when you look at me, I look like, I would say, traditional consultant with a blue shirt and a blue jacket. So there is something that I'd like to convey as a personal message. At Deloitte Digital, we are a bit different. We might look like consultants, but at the heart, we are experience designers. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you're convinced that prototyping is worthwhile. I'm waiting for you to give feedback on what could be your next case at our booth. Thank you again.